Oh, howdy all, grab yourselves a beer. It is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Now, we got the new Atlas today, and I posted a few thoughts on it earlier on, but what I wanted to do is compile a strategy aimed at veteran players and running tier 16 lair maps over and over throughout the league. So I wanted to break this down into a what, a why, and a list of assumptions, and a how. So firstly, what are we doing? We are going to be setting up our Atlas so that the only tier 16 that can drop for you is the Elder Lair map. We also want to make it so that the only tier 15s that can drop for you are Shaped Moon Temple and optionally additional shape maps. Otherwise, everything can drop, allowing as much as 150% Atlas bonus. Now, you'll get a few less lairs than you consume when you're actually running lair maps, and so that's what the tier 15 moon temples are for, and as well as delve mines. These are going to replenish your lair stock, your Elder Lair stock, when you fall a little bit behind over time, as I expect will happen unless the Blight League mechanics absolutely vomit out maps, and we'll find out how that goes. One important caveat, we don't know how the Atlas setup interacts with the blighted maps that are coming in the Blight League. That may throw a spanner in the works, and we may need to reassess this strategy when we know a bit more about the blighted maps. So the question of why. Why would you consider target farming Lair? It doesn't have the highest number of maps in the game, the highest number of monsters in the game. It's not the greatest layout, and it has one of the hardest bosses on the entire Atlas of Worlds. And the reason we do this is because of the high value divination cards that this map drops. So firstly, and most importantly, it has the Wolven King's Bite. This is a pretty rare divination card, and a set of 8 turns in for Rigwald's Quills. Rigwald's Quills is the most powerful quiver in the game, bar none, and it is absolutely light years ahead of any other alternative in this slot. The reason Rigwald's Quills is so good is because of the line Projectile's Fork. This is essentially equivalent to gems socketed in your bow, or well, to bow gems that you use are supported by about a level 11 fork support. Fork support's already a pretty compelling choice to use, and when you have Rigwald's Quills providing it for free, with no mana increase, and with very little opportunity cost for using it, Rigwald's Quills are incredible. They are nuts, they are so overpowered that it is not funny, and they are available from this divination card, which, whilst it's rare, it is not Doctor Rarity. It is a card that you will see plenty of times while you are running the Lair map. Additionally, there's some other divination cards of relevance as well. There is Loyalty, which is a very common drop that gives you 3 fusing orbs. Adds up slowly, but it does add up over time, given that you'll be turning in a lot of sets of this card. And as well as Loyalty, we also have Pride of the First Ones, which is for Farrell's Fur. Farrell's Fur is one of the most expensive pieces of armor in the game. It is extremely powerful. This divination card, however, unlike the Rigwald's Quills divination card, is extraordinarily rare. You won't see very many of these, but when you do, bonus 3 or 4 Exalt payday. So, the question of why, as we said, the divination cards. Rigwald's is an absolutely insane item that has high demand all throughout the league. Day 1, it is the most important item for absolute power gamers to get their hands on early. If you're playing a bow build, the first thing you need to get usually is a shaper bow that has the dexterity stacking to cold damage mod on it, and the second item you need to get is Rigwald's Quills. It is just that powerful an item. Now, there's very few players that can afford to buy Rigwald's Quills on day 1. Typically, each copy of the Wolven King's Bite goes for about 1 Exalted Orb in a mature league, and that's pretty similar on day 1 as well. So it's an expensive item, but it is possible. There will be people doing it, so there will be buyers, even from day 1 for this card. But even by day 40 or even day 80 of a league, there is huge demand due to how good quiver corruptions are. I had a quick look at the prices for +1 chain Rigwald's Quills selling in Legion Week 12, and they're going for, one of them is going for 500 Exalted Orbs, and the other one for 750 Exalted Orbs. I had a look for +1 arrow corruptions, and they're around the 1 Mirror of Kalandra range, so 230 or so Exalted Orbs. If you were to fluke both of them at once, it'd be the most expensive item on the server. I think you could probably ask 15 to 25 Mirrors of Kalandra for such an item, and so that's going to be that's the absolute dream item for any character that is using bow skills. So the quick maths on corrupting Rigwald's Quills. Item level 80 is required to roll to roll skills chain 1 additional time, so don't turn in the divination card for Rigwald's Quills until you are at least level 80. That shouldn't be a problem. Generally speaking, you won't be able to compile a set of it before level 80. You'll be running a good number of lairs, like a couple of hundred at least, in order to get your first set. There are 20 corruptions possible. 15 of them are common, 3 of them are uncommon, and 2 of them are rare. And unfortunately, the 2 that we care about are the rare ones. It is 2 in 169 for a given corruption to be +1 arrow, and it is 2 in 169 for a given corruption to be +1 chain. If you temple corrupt a Rigwald's Quills, you have approximately a 1 in 170 chance of hitting the chain mod plus some rubbish mod as your second Val implicit. You have about a 1 in 170 chance to hit +1 arrow as one of your mods and some rubbish mod as your other one. I have approximately a 1 in 14,000 chance to fluke both of them. Now decide on your own whether that merits double corrupting your Rigwald's Quills or not, or whether you should just sell them clean. The math says it is just worth doing at current prices, but only at a point in the league where there are enough wealthy players that can afford to buy the ones that hit hard. If you do decide to double corrupt your Rigwald's Quills, make sure that you divine it before you double corrupt it. This projectile damage mod, you want it to be at least 45 before you feed it to Elder's Altar and watch it explode. So, my assumptions for this Atlas setup. Firstly, I'm making the assumption that Rigwald's Quills survives the nerf bat. If the Quills get absolutely shat on, then this Atlas approach does too. Sorry. Secondly, this is not a particularly beginner-friendly Atlas strategy. You're going to be repeatedly grinding a tier 16 map with one of the hardest bosses on the entire Atlas, and you're also going to want to kill the boss too, because of the map returns that it drops, and also the ability to respawn Nico. Nico's master missions will respawn sometimes when you kill a map boss. At the time that I'm recording this video, which is during the Legion League, it's a 4% chance when you kill a map boss. That is getting changed in the Blight League, and I'm under the impression it's going to be increasing. That's what it seems like it's going to be doing from the GGG communication, but we have no firm numbers on that. Now, I'm also going to assume that you are fairly close to the cutting edge of progression in the league. So that means that you're going to be pushing deep into maps very early in the league. If you're not, you can skip some of the steps in this because you'll be able to buy maps in this guide. I'm also assuming that extreme map over sustain continues, and what I mean by that is that there's just going to be an enormous amount of sources of maps. Maps are not going to be rare like they were back in Incursion League. They're not going to be somewhat uncommon like they were in Synthesis League. They're going to be super common like they were in Legion League. We don't know this yet. If this turns out to be wrong, then there'll need to be a few modifications made. I'm going to assume that you're familiar with Zana's quest chain, and I will be making a video on that at some point in the future, but it isn't yet done. Next up, I'm going to assume that you're going to be delving and doing all of your Nico dailies, but not necessarily buying scarabs. And I'm also assuming you're probably doing this in a trade league. It plays to the strengths of the Lair map because there's an insatiable demand for Rigwald's Quills. You can certainly use this strategy in solo self-found, but what I suggest you do is you get yourself a set of Rigwald's Quills, and then after that you transition to a different setup for your Atlas. This is optimized heavily for farming multiple sets of Rigwald's Quills in a league, and clearly you only need one set of them. If you're playing in solo self-found, maybe you'll feed another couple of sets to the corruption altar, but yeah, if you're keen to corrupt lots of them, then go ahead. But I think that there's a limited usefulness to this strategy in solo self-found. So now we're going to talk about the how. I want to split this into, I've already mentioned at the start, the actual setup of what you're going to be doing with your Atlas, setting it up so that the only tier 16 is Elder Lair, that the only tier 15 is Shape Moon Temple and optionally additional shape drops, and that everything else can drop. But let's talk about how you set that up. So, your day one strategy. If you're in solo self-found, in addition to everything else, hoard your Horizon Orbs. These start dropping in Act 7, use few of them or none of them. If you're in a trade league, don't worry about this, you can just trade for maps that you need. From the start, you want to be hoarding your Master Cartographer's Sextants. You're going to need a bunch of these, a minimum of 3 of them if you're in a trade league, and a minimum of 15 if you're playing in solo self-found. And you're going to be a net consumer of Master Cartographer's Sextants. You'll be wanting to use a lot of them to juice up your lair maps, and so you're going to just want to be basically sourcing as many of them as you can. You'll also, as I say, need a few of them to uncomplete maps later on. You want to push into maps as soon as possible in the league. This is something I always talk about, that league start strategy. You want to try to be in maps within 6 hours of the league starting, and ideally you want to be into red maps within 9 hours of the league starting. Now that's not possible for everyone, and that's fine. You'll still get solid results from this approach, but you'll end up a little bit behind the curve of what you could have got if you take longer. You want to push Zana's quest chain ASAP. Try not to use too many Horizon Orbs chasing it, although you might have to. Use Zana's Horizon mod if it exists in 3.8 to advance filling your atlas. So that's a mod that you'll unlock fairly early in Zana's quest chain, where she will give you the opportunity to transform a map that you're putting into the map device into a different map of the same tier with random mods. You want to use that a lot when you're trying to fill out your atlas early on. Don't forget to always buy Zana's entire inventory of maps, at least early in the league. Now, you want to be delving as often as you've got Sulfite too, and buy Sulfite from other players if you're in a trade league and you're familiar with, with the ways that can work. This will turbocharge your map drops early when your atlas bonus is low, and when you most need it. It can be quite a pain in the ass to get through tiers 7, 8, 9, 10 when map drops start to get a little bit scarcer and your atlas bonus hasn't caught up yet. Now you want to do every map you can up to and including tier 14. When Zana's chain requires you to do a tier 15, do it, but you're then going to be uncompleting it later. In order to uncomplete a map, you will need a Master Cartographer's Seal. Master Cartographer's Seals come from vendoring 3 Master Cartographer's Sextants plus 1 Orb of Scouring. If you're in solo self-found, you're going to need to buy 5 Master Cartographer's Seals at least. If you're in a trade-enabled league, you're only going to need 1 because you can skip a step by buying a set of Shaper fragments later. So, when you're confident that you can kill the Shaper and you're at the right step of Zana's chain, i.e. she has awarded you all 3 of the tier 10 Shaper's Orbs, you want to skip the Shaper's Guardians, and you want to go straight to the Shaper. The way that you're going to do this is to purchase a Shaper set from someone else, or just buy the fragments individually. But if you're in solo self-found, you're going to repeat your 1 tier 15 that you've already done from the Zana chain until you get the connected Guardian. So just bringing up the Atlas here, let's just say that the Zana spawned on Coves, the Elder spawned on Coves. You're then going to keep running Coves until you get Lair of the Hydra. Once you've got Lair of the Hydra, you're going to use Horizon Orbs until you've got all 4 of the Guardians. So you'll do your first Hydra that you get, then your next one you'll Horizon it, and it'll become something else guaranteed, so you'll then run that new one. Your first Guardian that's not Hydra, you'll require 1 Horizon Orb. Your second one you'll require an average of 1.5, and your third one will require 3 on average. So 5.5 on average, but you could be very unlucky and need a lot more. That's why we've been saving them from the start. You don't need to roll your Guardian maps to be hard at all. You can skip valing them because we're just going to be deleting them from the Atlas later. Then once you've done Shaper, remove all the tier 16s from your Atlas and say goodbye to 12 Master Cartographer's Sextours, which is unfortunate. So, tier 1 to 14, you want to eventually complete all the maps. Absolutely all of them. Order doesn't matter, and it's okay to be missing a few for a while. Tier 15, you want to only be using your shaped tier 10 maps. The ones that are not connected to any natural tier 16 maps, so when you run them, the only tier 16s that can drop are your Elder Orb map. Tier 16, if you've done any of the Guardians, uncomplete them. Do Val Temple when and if you're capable of doing so. No shame in leaving that one aside for a while or even for a long time. It's a very hard map. And Tier 15, if any of the completed maps, just uncomplete them. Tier 10, we want to use our Shaper's Orb on Moon Temple. Optionally, also shape your favorite maps, but Moon Temple is the best one because of its monster quantity. It has the most monsters of any tier 10. An optional variant strategy, you can also shape Plateau and Bog, and the reason that you might consider this is that if you can move Elder and Shaper so that they're fighting over the tier 11 Lair map, they will also be often fighting over Plateau and Bog. If Plateau and Bog have been raised to tier 15, then you'll be able to run shape versions of those maps, and they will have more monsters in them, which means more chances to get your tier 16 lair drops. You're going to be running your shape tier 10s to replenish lairs as and when needed. Now, I also mentioned that you're going to be using the delve mines. You're going to slightly under-sustain following the base strategy, even if you're using a lot of sextants, and you'll under-sustain by a considerable amount if you're using a small amount of cartographer sextants. Blight mechanics might change this, but I'm just working under the assumption that they don't shit out maps like crazy. Now, tier 15s will help you here, running your tier 15s and getting the tier 16 maps from those, hence the Moon Temple. But once you get to 170 depth in the delve mines under the new system, the delve mines will turbocharge your map pool. This should be a high priority to push to 170 depth. And you want to get to the point that you no longer need to fall back on Moon Temple at all. You want to get to the point that you are getting all of the maps you need out of your lairs and out of your side tracks into the delve mines. Delve cities, especially at old depth 240, which is new depth 170, will just vomit out tier 16 maps like crazy. So that's everything for the tier 16 lair strategy. Hopefully you find this useful. If you've got any questions, definitely fire them away below. I am intending to make a more new player friendly version of an Atlas strategy as well at some point, but I'm still brainstorming on that because there's a lot of complexities to consider before recommending anything. Anyways, have a good one.